Good morning, everyone. My name is Chukwu Kafo. I'm happy to be on this symposium on the ABCs and the 1 to 3s of anatomical science outreach. And I'll be presenting on how to adapt outreach programs for the underrepresented and underprivileged population. If one has been able to identify a project to run as part of an outreach or a program or any targeted events, as form of an outreach, the next question to ask is how to actually adapt these programs to be able to target the underprivileged, the underrepresented, or even the marginalized population. And I'm going to be discussing how to do that and also be able to share some of our case studies on what we have been able to do in this regard. So the first question to ask is, why outreach in the first place? Why would it matter that one is seeking to find some level of inclusion and also to close some of the gaps that are existing? The word outreach means that, you are reaching out your hand to be able to take some people up, from where they are, and take them up to where they have never been. And once one is able to do an outreach, it is expected that it will be able to actually, close the gaps, the existing gaps, find some level of inclusion and some level of balance, within a cohort, within a community, or even the entire population. So it is why adaptation is very important to be able to capture persons that have been marginalized and to ensure inclusion as well. So it is very important to understand the unique challenges of different communities that we are targeting in any outreach program, whether it is a student cohort or a university setting or even, the public, the citizens, we must understand the unique challenges of that specific community. And then we'll be able to identify some of the barriers, and inequalities that are existing in that community such that we can include that in the planning. So we're going to be looking at some of these barriers and see how we can actually understand what they are and then know how to incorporate them during the planning and execution process of our programs. First on my list is the geographical barriers. So we can see what could constitute geographical barriers: the internet connection, access to some form of communication on the internet. I've particularly, had this experience, where you don't have even internet access and you have already developed, an online program, and then you have to see yourself, working it down and finding a way to, consider that and then use what is available in that community. Of course, power supply, accessibility, rural roads, and even some network of roads, even weather issues in some places where you might want to go. These are things that you have to incorporate during the planning process. Again, you have economic barriers. You have people that are low income, they have low purchasing power. The literacy level can also be affected, of course, due to economic barriers as well, and some that do not have health access. So this varies, depending on what you are planning. You might also want to sometimes consider, making some things, free for free, some things that, or giving some level of support for them to even participate in the outreach. And and that is the beauty of it, that at the end of the day, these barriers will be closed up to make sure that the impact you intend to make will not be lost. We also have some of the sociocultural barriers, which are actually more common from my own experience. You have issues around, religion, you have traditional culture, social culture, norms and values, and even language can be a hindrance. Sometimes when one to execute a particular program and you see yourself trying to, find locals that will be able to speak their language or be able to interpret some hardcore signs, so that these people will be able to relate And also we have issues of ethnicity as well that could also affect, outreach programs and things that we need to consider when we are making plans for execution. We also have the educational barriers. Literacy level again is also implicated here. And then you have some regions that have very low number of educational institutions. That is quite informative for you to know. And also whether there is some form of access to educational technologies. Depending on the program you're planning, you need to also get to know some of this. And then again, we consider the psychological barriers. We have some communities that are more resistant to change. In fact, sometimes this is quite related to some of the cultural or sociocultural issues that exist in such a place. So you discover that there is some level of, lack of emotional intelligence or low level of emotional intelligence. There is also systemic distrust. They only trust themselves, and always see a stranger as an intruder, and sometimes this leads to resistance to change. Of course, when we are doing things like campaign for vaccine or some kind of science advocacy, you get to meet some of these challenges, and you see some of these communities having some level of resistance to change. So these are some of the things that will be considered, during the planning process, to make sure that even that place that is unreached, even that place that is underprivileged, we should be able to use the outreach programs we're designing to be able to bridge those gaps and, make more impact in such communities. Again, outstandingly, one can also identify some institutional or political barriers, especially in some form of organized setting like a university or even a research, center, or even in your own institution, and you're trying to do some outreach targeted at teachers, at university lecturers, and so on, and you are going to see some policies. You're trying to do advocacy related to science-based policies, and you see some barriers that will try to stop you sometimes. So these are some of the things that will help you to shaping the way you approach a particular outreach. Who to meet, who to collaborate with, what funding to seek, and some of these things will come into play as to inform how you go about your planning. And then finally, we have technological barriers that speaks to the existing infrastructure in that place, and of course, the technical competence or know-how of that particular population. This will lead to, what exactly you're going to be going to the field with, what kind of technology you want to, add to part of your outreach programs, or whether it is even worth, doing at all. And these are some of the things that one has to note from the beginning. So in all of this, what is important that is that we develop culturally sensitive programs. So we must be able to understand, and the culture, the existing culture of that population. We should be able to make plans intentionally to respect these cultural differences, and we'll be able to, also respect their value system. And for any community at all that that program is serving, we should understand their local language. We should find help, to be able to, understand the nuances and even how to use some of them. And some of them, you tend to, when you tend to use them in the wrong places, it could mean something else. We've had that experience, especially local languages, and you need to find out early on, what works and what does not work, and to be able to somehow align your program to fit into the cultural identities and the practices, also to encourage, non-resistance of whatever initiative or whatever program, and to also, ensure that the impact will not be lost along the way. Again, I want to agree that it's important to leverage technology, especially with respect to reducing costs. We need to leverage technology for our outreach programs. Of course, it increases the reach, it helps us to get quicker feedbacks, but we need to also know, whether access to technology is one of the major challenges that are existing in that particular community. And if that is, it means that when we are leveraging technology, we are actually deepening the gap that is existing. because sometimes when you have done programs that are, technologically based for a community that is not suitable, you discover that some of the feedbacks you're getting, you might see yourself taking them as real feedbacks, but you might not know that those feedbacks are actually not complete, because those who are supposed to respond did not respond because of some of these barriers. And you, people have gone on to develop even further programs without getting the real feedbacks from people, due to existing technological gaps. So when technology is being used, it must be in settings where it is possible for one to do so. Again, we must also consider using open resources versus paid platforms, for art programs, such that people can easily be able to subscribe or be able to join free of access. And then sometimes we need to actually develop tailored, technological innovations that are targeted at specific population, to ensure that a particular group, a particular cohort, a particular setting that we're trying to reach out to will not have some impediment to joining us. One of the most important parts of outreach programs is the community engagement part. Sometimes what people do is that they engage the community during that program, sometimes even after the program when they are trying to take feedbacks. But then it is important to engage community genuinely. When I mean genuinely, it's not just for the books, not just for feedbacks, but we should be able to engage them even in the planning process. So engage the community, know what they want, know what they're looking for, know what it is like, and then we develop a program together with them, have some form of representation or some form of idea generation to be able to, plan a suitable outreach program for that particular population. Of course, this empowers local leaders, it helps to build trust, and the idea of systemic distrust will be completely removed. And then there is some form of two-way communication between your team and the community members, and that will lead to gross acceptance of any of the initiatives or any of the advocacies that is being made as part of that outreach program. Then again, we must collaborate among stakeholders. Collaboration saves resources. It is quite potential, has a lot of potentials for making more impact, and also, create some level of credibility and trust. For example, you might want to collaborate, if you are, doing an outreach in a place that has a different language, maybe a local language, still in the same country, but a local language. It could also be that it's even a different country altogether. You might also collaborate with respect to culture or even existing outreach initiatives, that has done something similar or that have actually, worked within that cohort. Find someone that has experience working in that place and bring it into your team, or someone who can be able to share their ideas on how to actually work for that with that cohort. And also you leverage strengths, and resources sometimes of partners. We've seen ourselves, partner with persons, from different organizations, to be able to deliver programs, because we've seen that some people already have existing network which we can leverage on, and that is a good thing to do, especially when you're trying to adapt a program to a marginalized population or to a specific population that is quite underprivileged. I'm just going to mention a little bit about sustainability, because one of my colleagues is going to be speaking, more elaborately on that. So just to inform us that it is important to know that funding gaps exist, and hugely so, within marginalized populations. And sometimes it's important to know that when we are targeting this population, there might be, a greater opportunity to, spend more, and we must track and identify potential funding sources ahead of time. Look for, models, program models that have, been effectively used to reduce costs, such that we'll be able to have a program that could last longer and that is scalable with respect to its funding mechanisms. So while we are incorporating some of these ideas, some of these barriers, noting them, identifying them, trying to implement them as part of our programs, we must also be able to take account, by, ensuring that we have accurate monitoring and evaluation of our programs. It has to be consistent. It has to be constant. It has to be there in the beginning. It has to be there during the process. It has to be there even after the programs as well. So there must have to be some level of tracking, some level of follow-up, some level of asking questions on the outcomes of our programs, so that we will be able to fine-tune those programs, optimize them, and make sure that it is really, really achieving the objectives and making the impact. So one of the things that we need to do is to find already existing models that are best practices and utilize them. And also, we can also create new models that work depending on what the program is all about, whether it's online versus offline, whether it is technology based versus non-technology based, whether it is targeted to students versus targeted to citizens versus targeted to lecturers or even researchers or any kind of cohort. So these models and evaluation platforms and ideas and monitoring mechanisms will help to be able to keep a tab on the progress and the impact of any specific programs that we are planning. So I'm going to be sharing our experience on adaptation, a project that we run in Nigeria, Lifeport Educational Project that has been on for years now. We're going to share some of our experiences on how we have adapted our program to suit a particular audience. So Science Advocacy Program for Youngsters is one of our flagship programs that are targeted at school children who are attending schools in places, where there are no educational infrastructure, especially related to, science-based practicals. So we have elected to bring some of the students and give them an off-school experience where they will be able to have hands-on experiences on different aspects of science. And we want to excite them about science and also see that hopefully they'll be retained as scientists in the future and close the existing gap, for some of their locations that do not actually attend universities in science-based courses. So we're hoping to improve that through this program. Initially, this program has been a physical program, but then during COVID, we're asking ourselves, what do we do to be able to adapt this program to also not reduce the impact, but to sustain the impact. And we are going to see how we've been able to do that. So the first thing we did was to develop a program for teachers, a train-the-trainer program, such that we train a few, and these few are going to continue training, the other teachers, within their own cohort. And we even published some of those findings, online on Journal of STEM Outreach, which you can easily track. And we now went further, to be able to now develop specific programs which we partnered with Better Learning Experiences of USA and Anatomy Academy of USA as well. We developed a program on engaged learning, which we plan to do, we actually did online. So that program was able to help us, to bridge that gap, because we also saw that our students will not be able to access technology. They don't have access to this technology. They don't even have the technical know-how, but at least we're able to identify some of their teachers who were able to have this access. And then we provided free of charge, access to some of them and supported their access to online technology. And we're able to have a hands-on program that is based on engaged learning, that is targeted at teachers, such that those teachers are now going to, put back those initiatives and those learnings and knowledge on their students. And that way, we are impacting not just the teachers, but also the students as well. So this is just to show you a snapshot of when that program is happening that we successfully conducted. Interestingly, we're able to actually, find out whether these programs were really working for us, and we put a benchmark of 80%, as to, to determine our success or to determine the level of impact. So we asked them questions around, what worked for them, whether, some of the things that were taught were new to them, or whether they are actually relevant. And, you can see from the chart here, from the pie chart here, that over 70% agreed, that, some of the things that they are saying were new to them, and also were relevant as well. Again, we also assessed whether they can apply this knowledge in their teaching, and also whether the workshop actually increased their interest in engaged learning. And again, we are also seeing that over 80% also, we're able to say yes to this, agree to that fact, that they can apply it and it actually increased their interest in engaged learning. So we didn't just assess, their knowledge. We also assessed the program itself. So we wanted to know what is working within the program and what is not working. So we asked them what is least interesting versus what is most enjoyable, and we're able to note that for future programs as well. And we wanted to know the potentials of even developing other programs, even from this. So we wanted to find out whether this could be considered as a part of curriculum development, engaged learning. Currently, it is not. So we wanted to know whether it is a project to pursue. And again, we can see that these teachers, are excited and felt that, this could be considered, during curriculum development. And in fact, they wanted to be part of a continuous professional development for teachers. And hopefully, we are going to be looking forward to closing that gap in the near future. These evaluation reports or program assessment has helped us to further develop actually an online program. Having seen the success we recorded, we now adapted that particular training and have been able to, with the support of better learning experiences of the USA and Anatomy Academy, we're able to establish a free online course for teachers that are usually teachers that are in underrepresented population, to be able to assess and then learn some of the engaged learning models we've developed, and also be able to spread that knowledge across their communities. So I want to conclude by saying that science should be accessible to all regardless of background and location. So whatever program that we are planning to do in form of an outreach, it must be targeted somehow to persons who are underrepresented to close these gaps. So that way we can actually empower individuals, with more knowledge to improve their health, education, or even overall quality of life. So we have to adapt outreach programs for this population. Is not just about ensuring inclusivity, but it's about recognizing and addressing these unique challenges that these communities or cohorts face. And we know that when we tailor these programs to suit, socioeconomic, cultural, educational realities of this diverse population, it can actually create more effectiveness, respect, and also sustain these initiatives that we are running as well. I want to thank my team members. I want to thank Muhammad Yusuf, who is currently taking on my role as chair for this symposium, and also Smart Mbawu, who is also presenting online as well. Selfie Handayani for also joining us on this team, and also for Jonathan Wisco from Better Learning Experiences, who contributed to this symposium, and Dana Peterson of Anatomy team, who all contributed development of this symposium. I want to acknowledge you all and say thank you. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I hope that you have a wonderful conference in Gwangju. For any question you might have regarding this symposium, please feel free to reach out to me, or for any collaboration regarding outreach programs or development or even evaluations, you are free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to welcome your questions and answer them. Yeah, thank you.